Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Stephen D. Kelly, and this is the Stephen D. Kelly Show, and we are Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. It's now 6:01. Not too much screwing around. It's October 10th, 1024, otherwise known as 1010. I'm not going to get into that tonight. Anyway, 2024. Last week's show was called The Fog of War. And typically when someone says the fog of war, what that refers to is what you know about that's going on in the battlefield. Who's winning, who's losing, what happened to who. It takes a little while for the smoke to dissipate, the dust to settle, before the bullets to stop flying, before you can really get out there and find out what happened. Who won, who lost, who survived. That's what the fog of war usually means. A lot of times it has to do with those of us that are trying to observe it from the outside. We're not in it. If we're in it, we know pretty good what's happening, at least what's happening around us. But for those people that are sitting in their armchairs waiting for the news pundits to tell them what happened, sometimes it takes a little while because the fog of war hasn't lifted. Well, we're still in a war mode for sure. And I have to talk about the war, even though it hasn't started. Last week I told you it was imminent. It's still imminent. But things change. Sometimes it takes a little longer for the fog to lift. But sometimes it's not fog we have to deal with. Sometimes it's a fucking hurricane. Tonight's show is going to be called The Hurricanes of War. That just came to me. I thought that sounded appropriate. If we're going to have fog of war, which seems like a weather phenomenon, why not a hurricane of war? Or a wildfire of war? Or a modified weather war? Something like that. Anyway, none of this is far-fetched, and if you're going to talk about Ukraine, you really have to talk about it as a lost cause at the moment, because they really are within a very short period of time before it's completely gone, even though Zelensky's running around Europe still trying to push his plan for peace, which basically is the Russians give up. So I guess I'll give you a play-by-play of what's going on with them. We'll just suffice it to say right now that it's really, really bad. I hear they want to lower the age of conscription to 18. And I thought, wow, 18. I thought they already used up the 18-year-olds. I thought they'd be lowering it down to 16 by now. Got to get rid of those people. Well, in our little country, are having some massive devastation. And of course, it's become political, and it's become an extreme sore point for a lot of people, because they're coming to the realization that the United States took all our money and shipped it to Ukraine. We went into debt to ship our money to Ukraine to pay for their war. Of course, we're in debt for other reasons too, like COVID, et cetera. And what is it, up to 40 trillion now that we owe? I know it passed 20 a long time ago. I'm pretty sure it's up to like $40 trillion deficit. But the thing is because of the disaster from the last hurricane, not even including the one that's going on right now, people are upset because the government is offering them $750 one-time payment for their problems. Kind of very reminiscent to what happened to the people in Hawaii, although in Maui, I'm not sure they got 750, but it seems like I've heard that number before. It's almost like that stimulus check people got for the COVID, which I never got. But anyway, what's becoming a problem, though, is the fact that we do have a relatively free alternative media on social media, at least as far as Twitter is concerned. Obviously, I've been kicked off of Twitter because of, Hebrew stuff. But compared to all the other organs, it's pretty free. And of course, Telegram, where you can find our site, our mission at Occupy the Getty /Stephen D. Kelly. It's pretty easy to find. We're pretty free to discuss whatever we choose without any sort of censorship or moderation whatsoever. Obviously, we don't conduct anything illegal, and we certainly don't say anything unpatriotic. But we're hated. We're hated. Now, everybody knows that weather is modified. Everybody knows that HAARP exists. Everybody knows that the U.S. government has been pushing around the ionosphere with microwaves for a reason for a long time, causing everything from hurricanes to, well, earthquakes. I mean, you guys all remember Katrina. Now, Katrina was actually a scalar weapon. It was convergence of scalar weapons which caused that high pressure zone, which basically took all that moisture that was pumped into the vicinity and pushed it down and squeezed it just like you would if you were to squish a sponge between your hands and all the water came out. That's basically what happened with Katrina. And if you look at the weather patterns, you'll notice that it's a nice intersecting rectangle, roughly. And this is because of the intersecting scalar wavefronts. Now, like I said, everybody knows about HAARP, but here's the thing. We've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is an outspoken Republican firebrand woman who, of course, the opposite side of the aisle condemns as being a crazy lunatic, who knows what, white supremacist, Nazi, who knows what, this, whatever they call her. But she basically has come out and said that, yes, the weather has been modified. Now, here's the thing. There are patents, dozens and dozens of patents. At least I saw something like 40 patents going back to the original cloud seeding up to the most recent patent, which I think was 2021. And a lot of these things were actually involving creating hurricanes, steering hurricanes. Modifying hurricanes. Now, as a Jedi, I can tell you that we do that. We try to do that ourselves. If a hurricane is going to make landfall, we try to steer it away. We push. Every human is capable of producing a field of energy called magnetic induction, which could be used and targeted and directed to physically move something. And enough of us working together could do miraculous things like moving hurricanes. But you could do the same thing with HAARP, or you could do the same thing with a scalar weapon, or any kind of system capable of producing the suitable wavefront necessary to move that air mass either in a circular way or in a directional way. Now, what did we see with this one hurricane that just came in and wiped out the country? It was in the Gulf. It started out as got itself up to a Category 2. But almost immediately, it went up to a Category 4, something we're not used to seeing. Category 3 is devastating, but this became a Category 4. And it made landfall. And it maintained its strength. And when it crossed over Florida, it didn't go out into the Atlantic. It didn't continue to proceed in a northeasterly direction. It went due east right along the coast of the United States. On land. Almost like it was being steered. Like somebody was guiding a death ray. It followed the coastline. Why would it do that? What meteorological weather phenomena would cause such a thing. Did God decide to take his hand and push that hurricane up the coast and screw North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, etc., Florida, whoever was in the path of it, especially those people in North Carolina? Sure seems that way. Sure seems irregular. A category 4. Just going up the entire coastline. Anyway, now we could talk about the artificial nature of what caused this thing to happen. We could talk about the human response, the FEMA response, the various inaction and things that have happened, the motives, the reason for devastating the public, the money. But I think I want to kind of cut to the chase. And I know when I do a show like this, I try to think of ways of how I can do it without alienating a specific demographic, especially my friends that belong to this demographic, because, again, not all Jews are Zionists, not all Germans are Nazis. Well, here's the thing. Why in the hell did this happen? Why in the hell did our government, that we know has the technology, we know has the resources, we know has the funds to do this, why would they do that? Why would they kick this thing up so big, record-breaking, and then drive it up and down the coast just to destroy the area? One of the things you have to consider when you're talking about devastation and human sacrifice, because all of these things, that's what they are. They're holocausts, they're blood sacrifices to Satan. This is obviously a blood sacrifice to Satan. This is obviously creating a lot of loosh. Why do they do this? What we're seeing is the Samson option. We're being punished. We're seeing our masters, the ones that have taken all our money and shipped it across the country, shipped it across the ocean to places like Israel and Ukraine, done everything they could to prop that up. I'll tell you something. Let's just say this. If you took all the money that was given to Israel in aid since, the original, since all this started, that would equate to something like, I think it's like $400,000 per person in the United States. Ridiculous amount of money. Anyway, the point is that in spite of all the money and all the money spent on controlling our country and all the money spent on those politicians that were supposed to deliver those weapons, it's almost like we're in a situation very similar. At least this is what we're told. It might not have actually worked out this way, but at least the storybooks like to tell us that this is how it happened. But they say that when Germany was losing the war and Berlin was going to fall, that Hitler wanted to torch everything. He wanted to destroy everything. Let the German people be destroyed because they failed. They didn't deserve to live. Because as Germans, they failed. They couldn't defend the fatherland. Well, in this case, of course, the fatherland, it's still a Nazi institution, but it's in Ukraine. But stretches from Ukraine to Tel Aviv. This is what we're up against. So, thanks to Putin and all his allies and technology and the hard work of those people, all of our efforts, all that money spent is coming crashing down. It's going to be over. And again, it took something like this to make the people pissed off. Now, again, you could look at all the different speculations for what agendas were being played, what motives there were. A lot of people say that the areas that were most substantially targeted were Trump strongholds, conservative types, Bible Belt, whatever you want to call it. people more inclined to vote for Trump. So truly, you could say this was a punishment. Could you say that about Maui? No. We know that they're already planning a 15-minute city for Tampa, Florida, which was hit, although it could have been a lot worse, at least from what I hear. They didn't get a complete flood. They didn't get a storm surge. They got a anti-surge. The water actually pulled out as opposed to flooding in. So, but they're still planning. They've already got plans. And these areas that are most devastated in the Carolinas, where they're offering people $750, which is about enough money to buy food and diapers perhaps for a month, maybe a few nights stay in a hotel room. I know $750 will supply you for 1 month of life in Southern California. I don't know how it's supposed to help those guys, but obviously something's wrong. Now, if you look at the organizations that are supposed to be helping these people, you just got to look at the names of the people and the faces of the people that are running this administration, the Biden administration. Not to say that Trump's going to be any different. We got to talk about that guy, but point is that the tribalism and the embedded nature of people that are, let's just say, have a genetic disposition supposedly to supporting the issues of Ukraine and Israel, those people are in control. And they're not just in control of our pocketbooks and deciding where our money goes, but they're also in control of whether or not you get any when they destroy your home with the systems that they also control. Do you really think that some part of the government is controlling this stuff? I mean, I try to tell you guys, obviously, that a lot of it's underground and you need to go underground. And a lot of the facilities, I think they are able to obviously control from underground, obviously. I got to tell you what really pisses me off, though. I mean, obviously, this flooding and the fact that they are creating these hurricanes, which are still in effect, they're kicking them up to Category 4s and blaming it on global warming bullshit. What really pisses me off right now is the wildfires going on. I don't keep track of them, but I did see a clip of a park in, I believe it was New Mexico, Wyoming, perhaps. And it was something like 25,000 acres that are burning. And they say that normally a big, huge fire like that might get up to 12,000 or something like that. But this, so far, already has consumed more acreage than anything before it. This is already record-setting. And I'll tell you, I see these big bull elk with their huge set of antlers together running through the fire, trying to find a way. Pisses me off. Pisses me off. You start killing the people, you start killing the animals, I'm really going to start noticing. They can't save themselves. When I think of the flooding in what happened in North Carolina, how many of those homes, how many of those people had dogs and cats? Where are they? I'm a little pissed off. These guys that did this shit, that pushed those buttons and created it, they want you dead. They want to kill off the people in Ukraine, but they want to turn that into their kingdom. They had grandiose ideas of gutting our entire country and using it to turn themselves into an all-powerful bastion, centralized power. That failed. The entire West, Europe, United States, other areas, other countries, have demilitarized themselves and shipped all their weapons to Ukraine to try to turn it into some huge, colossal, modern army the Slavic soldiers, to go up against the best that Russia had. This was World War III. This was the big war that NATO had been planning. But instead of crossing into Poland, crossing into East Germany, across Czechoslovakia, etc., now they had pressed their army all the way up to the borders of Russia and taken over parts of what should be Russia, Ukraine. And to add insult to injury, they used the entire population of that country as cannon fodder. And they kept saying, down to the last man. Well, they didn't say that, but they did say, as long as it takes, which basically means down to the last Ukrainian. Which the Russians know that if they're to have a successful peace, they know that they have to basically take it down to the last Ukrainian and get rid of anybody of fighting age, fighting capability, of desire to fight, and remove them so they don't become insurgents and terrorists, so that the country could actually be assimilated into Russia. Anyway, so the point is, the very fact that Americans are becoming so pissed off at these people, it bodes poorly for Kamala Harris. Not because she's any better than Trump, but because she is the rightful heir to the Biden administration. If anything, we know that she will continue the policies of the Biden administration, only be worse. And when we say Biden administration, we know it is the Obama/Hillary Clinton administration. And they know that it will continue. And Kamala will probably try to be her own woman, but what she will end up being is an absolute Marxist. And that can't happen. So let's talk about Trump a little bit. Now, obviously, we pray Trump is going to beat Kamala, because we know what a horrible, horrible, dystopian, Marxist, wicked, Kafka-esque future we would be looking at if that bitch actually takes office. But here's the thing about Trump. First of all, he is Chabad. He is the same thing that is causing the hurricanes, that is sucking up all the money for this endless war. He is the same thing. Chabad is Ukraine. Chabad is Israel. Chabad is the Russian mafia. These are the central players in this entire world catastrophe that's playing out right now. Trump says that he'll pull out of Ukraine. He says he'll end it. But what does he also say? He says that he'll make NATO pay their fair share. In other words, the bulk of the money that goes into NATO comes from the United States. Obviously, that's not correct. It's not right. He says that they should pay more. Those European countries should devote larger portions of their gross national product to their defense industries. And in the case of NATO, we know that NATO nations are required to purchase the weapons that are considered the NATO specification, which of course are going to be American weapons systems and possibly integrated systems with the French and the English. So you're going to be flying an F-16 and it may have Storm Shadow missiles on it. But basically, that's what all your NATO buddies are going to be flying. Well, this obviously is a problem. You know, NATO's going to die. NATO is still clinging to life, but they know that in order for Ukraine to be ended, one of the things that Russia will probably do is ask for the abolishment of NATO, the dissolvement of NATO, and the creation of a new security agency, something that is not bent on the destruction of Russia and guilty of the sins of the previous group, which was nothing less than a holdover of the Nazis. Everybody knows that NATO was Nazi. Nazi people set it up. Nazi people set up the whole thing. Nazi officers manned it. But now that we know that Ukraine is a complete Nazi outfit, they don't hide it. They spray paint the swastikas and the SS and everything else all over the place. They've got it on their uniform. They do the Sieg Heil. They don't hide it. You can't say that that's not what they are, and at the same time they are also Chabad mafia. So you know that that's what our country is run by. You know what's in charge. So just like an angry Hitler getting ready to lose Berlin, they're torching our parks. They're unleashing biological warfare. They're unleashing weather warfare. They're using all their secret toys to punish us and try to change the future. If they can salvage their loss, they would like to do that. If they can keep Trump out of office, they would like to do that. Not that it's going to make any difference. There are no weapons that we have, that anybody has, that can stop the inevitable collapse and destruction of Ukraine. There's nothing. There's no money. There's no soldiers. Even if they were to lower the draft age in Ukraine to 16, and they could basically grab 600,000 16, 17-year-olds, what are you going to do? You're going to be able to train them? How many months is it going to take to train? And if you do have the luxury of being able to train them, what are you going to give them for weapons? There are none. It's so pathetic. You know, I think what it was, Lithuania, they put up a thing on Twitter. They were very proud because there was a shipment in transit and it was going to Russia, I think it was from Kaliningrad or something like that. They stopped this shipment and confiscated it because inside it was 4 pairs of Russian-made camouflage pants, BDUs. I'm thinking, and then they broadcast this and says, we're going to take this and we're going to send it to Ukraine. That's the help. So anyway, people, when you've got the left, the crazies, the Kamalas, the Pelosi's, whoever, the Clintons, saying that we're crazy for talking about weather modification, and how dare we, and saying that all of the people on the right side of the aisle are completely crazy and influenced, misinformed, there's a couple things we should consider. A, Trump could more vocally defend us. He could more vocally say quite a few things. Why has Trump not mentioned the Getty connection to Kamala Harris or Pelosi or the others? Why not? What does he have against identifying a fellow billionaire in public as a driving force behind his enemies, his political enemies? Why has that got to be a secret? You got to wonder. There was another point I wanted to make, but there's really nothing that they're going to do about it. They're going to try to hurt us. I really don't know. I really don't think that Trump is going to do anything, but he will definitely. Well, what does Trump say? All right, well, let's talk about Israel and Iran. I did not see any sort of retaliation yet from Israel against Iran. And every day that goes by, Iran receives more radar, more electronic warfare systems, more sophisticated anti-air systems, and now they are taking delivery of advanced Sukhoi 35 fighter jets, which are working so well in Ukraine. Now, in the West, I probably said this before, you probably heard me, but in the West, we have this doctrine. We're all about our air power and our Air Force. We just assume that nobody makes jets like ours, and our jets have the best gadgets, and we make the best missiles and we can shoot down anything and we can attack anything on the ground. And if they try to track our jets with the radar, we'll take it out with an anti-radar missile and yada, yada, yada. This is our thing. In fact, in the entire West, we hardly have any ground-to-air missile systems. We hardly have anything. Nothing. Because why? Because we depend on the jets. We figure if an aircraft tries to penetrate our area, we're gonna shoot it down we're gonna scramble our jets and shoot it down. Well, what about cruise missiles and stuff? What about ICBMs? What about this? Obviously, jets can't tackle that, but that's what we've got. So Israel is holding back for some reason. Now, we know that Netanyahu, we know that all these guys, they're just dying to get into Iran. They can't wait any longer. But the thing is that Gaza is not working out. It's a catastrophe, even for the side that is supposedly winning. And Lebanon is not working out either. This war against Hezbollah is not working out so well, and they want to add even more troops, and yet their troops are dying. Now, probably the most important thing is that the Western media and the organs for Israel and the U.S. and these different players, Western players, well, at least in Israel, they've played down the effectiveness of the Iranian missile attack on the 5 airfields and the Mossad headquarters. Now, here's what we've learned. We've learned that every one of those 180 missiles was hypersonic. But when they entered the atmosphere, they went above the atmosphere, and when they re-entered, they slowed down something like 4,000 feet a second. It was pretty fast. I don't have the exact number, but the point is that when they impacted, they came in very fast, and they also came in very precise. And we know now for sure that these things were targeted using Russian satellites and Russian technicians. And we know now that they didn't just land in scattered different places. Each one of these things landed where it was supposed to, on a bunker, on a aircraft area, on a specific part. And it's very likely that they did take out 20 F-35s, which could be, I don't know, let's see, over half of the ones that they had available to go and plan this big attack that they require, these F-35s, because that's the only thing that can supposedly enter the enemy airspace. This is not a good thing. And the thing is also is that they know now that this was restrained. They know now that there was nothing they could do. There was no Iron Dome. There was no intercepting these missiles. The best they could do is catch a couple of them. But, they also fire decoys when they do this stuff. Poor Jordan could only watch these things streaking over the sky in the direction of Israel, vainly trying to shoot down what they could, actually causing the death of one of their own civilians when they finally did catch one. So Israel is very reluctant now to do anything, even though they're dying to do it. They have no choice. They want to do it no matter what. They're going suicide. They're going Samson on the world. They know they're goners. They know that this is their only chance, because if they don't do it, it's only a matter of time before they are never able to do anything. And every day that goes by, more of these hypersonic missiles are being built. More jets, more anti-aircraft systems, more electronic warfare, more drones, more bunkers, and more nuclear material. So Israel, as I said last week, flat out says that if they do bomb and attack Iran, that they will go after the most important strategic target they can think of, which is the nuclear facilities. They know that if they are going to try to stop Iran's nuclear ambition, they have to take out this facility. And this is the only time they're ever going to be able to do it. And because the whole world would say, no, you don't bomb nuclear facilities. You don't release nuclear material into the environment, causing collateral damage that could go on for aeons. They have no cares. They plan to do it. Biden, of course, says, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Everyone says the only reason they're not doing it is because the Biden administration is convincing them not to. And then we have Trump, who's supposed to be the smart one, who's supposed to be the lesser of the two evils, who's supposed to be the one that's going to save us from Armageddon. And what does Trump say? He says, bomb the nuclear facilities. Israel needs to bomb the nuclear facilities. What are they waiting for? Obviously, anybody that's going to bomb a nuclear facility is going to be branded as an enemy to humanity. The same way that Ukrainians are being branded as enemies to humanity by attacking the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant and trying to attack the Kursk nuclear power plant. They actually actively do it, and no one says anything. The International Atomic Regulatory Agency, it monitors the situation, but the Russians have to protect the inspectors so that they don't, get bombed. So why would a civilized country allow something like that to exist? It won't. It won't. The funniest thing I saw, I think it was today, was in the EU. It was the Prime Minister of Hungary, Orban, and up on the podium speaking was this gynecologist woman, von der Leyen, and she was trashing the Prime Minister of Hungary for daring to decide who is allowed in their country and not following the EU rules, and how it was undemocratic to actually have some control over his own country. It was incredibly bad, but the point is that this is the one person that has any kind of credibility in the EU. It's extremely bad. And what is wrong with these people? It's the same thing with every single one of them. They're in the grip of the Rothschild money, the people that want to bring back the European Union, the people that are stuck in the whole Charlemagne business. Obviously, that's not going to happen. And it's going to die, and it's going to take a lot of people with it. And unfortunately, even if we didn't have these bastards that ruined everything, trying to now inflict terror, political objectives, and ruin upon their domestic enemies, it's all the same people, and it's very hard sometimes to not be angry in a very racist way. Don't want to do that. But at the same time, I can see that in the future, this can never be allowed to happen, because when I look at the other side of the coin, Russia and the rest of the world versus our Western society, especially here in the U.S. and Britain and what have you, but here in the U.S., when I see these individuals that are in control of these agencies that have direct control over all of our lives, every aspect, and I see that they all belong to the same group. It's like the woman that just became president of Mexico. Everyone says she's the first female president. They don't mention that she's the first Jewish president, and in a Catholic country. So when she took office, she broke protocol. Instead of holding her hand on a Bible like every single leader of this country up until that point, what did she do? She held a feminist, pagan, Aztec ritual at some pyramid. When I say feminist, I mean it was a witchcraft event. Witches. The Satanism isn't even being hidden. It's being celebrated. So everybody's responsible, you guys. You let this in, you put up with it. We supposedly won World War II, and what did we win? We won the right to have ourselves fucked over by this insidious enemy. And I'm really over it. And I'll tell you, I like to think that this mission has a clock, and that clock is basically based around me. And I'll tell you, 12 years now, this November will be, since the last Alchemy event in November 2012, I'm going to be there in October here next week. You're not going to hear me next week. I'll be this show right here because I'll be in Las Vegas, hopefully still alive. Anyway, I would expect now by 12 years that I'd be done. Okay, a lot more would happen. So I want a lot more to happen. If you still want to go to the show, if you haven't decided, you need to go to the biomedexpo.com and get yourself a ticket and show up. I'm not going to tell you anything else, but if you want to donate to the cause, you got to use the PayPal at StephenKelly714 at yahoo.com, and you got to say friend or family, or I will send it back. And you got to join my Telegram group, of course, which is Stephen Kelly, or I'm sorry, Occupy the Gay / Stephen D. Kelly. All right, and send me an email if you need to ask me any questions, or if you want a copy of the book, or you can't find the link to the Telegram page, or you want to be a Jedi, or any silly thing you want healing. Okay, send me an email to law17gun at AOL.com. That's law17gun at AOL.com. All right, anyway, I see there's a pretty decent number of you out there listening, and I'm cutting it short here just because. All right, if you want to see me on stage, I hope you come down to that event. And remember, when you come, you're coming to see me. You're not coming to hear something that they say I'm going to talk about. You're coming to see me. And if you're coming to cause me trouble, you will get trouble. All right? So with that, I'm going to say thank you again for tuning in. This is the Stephen D. Kelly Show. My name is Stephen D. Kelly. It's still 10/10/2024. This is Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. I'll see you guys soon. God willing, I'll have another show here in 2 weeks. Okay? With that, I'll say thank you, first of all. And in case I never talk to you again, I love you all. Good night. God bless. Adios. And goodbye.